Thank you all again for joining me this afternoon for an overview of the commercial HACCP plan. I'm going to go ahead and get started now. It's about 5 minutes after, so we can go ahead and move forward. So today we're going to talk about the commercial HACCP plan template, which is designed for schools that prepare food on site and are permitted food establishments. Our goal in this webinar is to focus on the key areas of the HACCP plan template and how to use each section. So how many of you feel like this every time you pull out your HACCP notebook? Well, today we're going to try and take the sizzle out of the HACCP book so you can be calm, cool, and collected when using your HACCP book. First, I want to start by going back to the very beginning. Why do schools have a HACCP book in the first place? First, the USDA requires that all school food authorities participating in the National School Lunch Program or the School Breakfast Program have a food safety program for each of its food preparation and service facilities. The food safety program must be based on Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, or what we call HACCP, principles, and it also must comply with the guidance issued by the USDA. And secondly, but most importantly, food safety is one of our top 3 priority areas. The safety of those we serve is critical, and we take it very seriously. Although food safety is not technically a PS1 or PS2 violation when it comes to an administrative review, our state will take action if there are severe food safety violations. The requirement to develop a food safety plan was included in the USDA 2004 Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act and has been implemented since 2006. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction Office of School Nutrition and NC State have developed templates for schools to customize and use at individual feeding sites. The North Carolina HACCP plan templates meet the 2017 FDA Food Code, which has been adopted in North Carolina. The HACCP plan templates are reviewed and updated annually as needed to comply with the Food Code and other best practice updates. Revisions are generally highlighted for easy reference. There are 2 different sets of state regulations for food establishments that provide the basis for our HACCP plan templates. One set comes from our state general statutes. Your health inspector may refer to these as the 2600 rules. Among other things, these rules impact how inspection points and grades are assessed and provide requirements for the person in charge. The first link you see on the screen will take you to these rules. The second link is to the North Carolina Food Code. As I said, North Carolina has adopted and is currently operating under the 2017 FDA Food Code, although there is a more recent version that has been issued by the FDA. The NC Food Code guides the do's and don'ts for foods offered for sale in North Carolina. This is the document on which the food establishment permitting and inspection grades are based. A note about the FDA Food Code. The purpose of the FDA Food Code is to safeguard public health and provide safe food to consumers. The FDA develops a model food code, which we refer to just as the food code, and issues updates about every 4 years. States can choose to adopt the model food code or develop their own food safety rules as long as they are consistent with national food safety regulatory policy. So what is HACCP? We already said this, but HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point and is a systematic approach used to create a food safety program that is designed to analyze and control foodborne hazards by focusing on each step of the food preparation process from receiving to service. The HACCP plan is designed to prevent foodborne illness rather than to react to an outbreak. When properly implemented, a HACCP-based food safety program will help ensure the safety of school meals served to children across North Carolina. You may have heard the term person in charge, or PIC, when talking about food safety and HACCP. This can be found in the Food Code and other food safety regulations. The Food Code defines a person in charge as the individual present at a food establishment who is responsible for the operation at the time of inspection. The person who serves as the PIC of a school kitchen is typically a school nutrition manager or it could be the school nutrition administrator of a small charter school, RCCI, or non-public school that prepares food on site. The food code also requires the person serving as the PIC to have a Certified Food Protection Manager certification, which we will talk about in more detail later. More than one person in a school kitchen may have this certification, such as a manager and assistant manager, although there is only one PIC at any given time during operations. NCDPI has 4 HACCP plan templates available for school food authorities to use. The one we're talking about today is the commercial kitchen template, and it's widely used for sites preparing and serving meals in a commercial type kitchen. We also have the transported or catered meals template, which is used for sites that receive meals transported from another kitchen. The home-style kitchen template is used by some residential care, child care institutions, or RCCIs, with domestic-style kitchens feeding students in a group home setting. The central warehouse template is used by school food authorities with a central warehouse to store purchased and USDA foods for distributions to each school site. Even though a warehouse site does not prepare foods, food safety is very important during the storage and transport process, and it is subject to a HACCP plan and monitoring. We are going to review the commercial kitchen plan, as I've said, in this webinar, but you may need more than one plan depending on your district's operations. For example, some districts that operate a central warehouse for storing school nutrition food and beverage items would need both a commercial kitchen plan for their self-prep school sites and also a central warehouse plan for their central warehouse. We hope to see you with those of you with a central warehouse during the HACCP plan webinar focusing on that plan later on this month. So this slide shows where the HACCP plan templates are located on our website. As we said earlier, these templates are updated annually. So each year, each school food authority must download the templates and complete the information to make the plan specific to their facility or school. Feel free to go ahead and visit the website shown here or scan the QR code with your phone or mobile device to get to this page. You may want to go ahead and download the parts of the template now and follow along with me as we go through each one of them. Now let's take a closer look at each part. The massive first part of our commercial HACCP plan template is really a comprehensive reference guide to safe food handling procedures, corrective actions, and more. Essentially, it's everything you didn't know you needed to know about food safety in school kitchens. If you have a question about how to handle food safely or why it should be handled a certain way, look here first for your answer. If you still don't know or need more clarification, feel free to contact me or your school nutrition consultant. Part 1, as I said, contains comprehensive information with helpful resources. This section does not have to be printed, although it must be easily accessible to employees in the kitchen. For example, if it's stored electronically on the computer in the manager's office, staff must know how to find and open the file so they can find the information needed. This part contains the following reference and resource materials about food safety: prerequisite program standards, safe food handling procedures, corrective action requirements, HACCP process information, allergen facts, and environmental health position statements. And we'll go through each one of these next. The main sections of Part 1, as I said, are the prerequisite programs, the safe food handling procedures, and the corrective actions. Prerequisite programs are basically the foundation of the food safety program. They provide the basic requirements for maintaining the things that are needed to store and prepare the food. That means facilities, equipment and smallwares, and the people. Safe food handling procedures are what needs to be done to ensure the food is handled safely. Basically, these are the day-to-day actions around handling the food itself. And lastly, the corrective actions are what to do if there's a problem, if prerequisite programs or safe food handling procedures are not followed correctly. More detail about prerequisite programs. They include food code requirements, other state regulations, USDA requirements, state agency requirements, and best practices. I'm not going to read the full list here, but as you can see, it addresses the disposition and care of the facility, equipment and smallwares, and employees. Safe food handling procedures is pretty self-explanatory. These are what needs to be done to ensure that food is handled safely. In other words, as I said, the day-to-day actions around handling the food itself. Safe food handling procedures are divided into several categories and subcategories as shown on this slide. It also includes reference material, like appendices, on everything from transportation vehicles to shelf life guidance, to cooking and reheating temperatures, to TPHC procedure guidance, to bodily fluid cleanup procedures, and many other topics. Corrective actions, as we said, are what to do if a standard is not met. In other words, there is an issue with controlling a potential hazard. So this could occur if prerequisite programs or safe food handling procedures are not followed correctly or not followed at all. Corrective actions are based on critical control points and critical limits established in the safe food handling procedures. This is part of the HACCP process. So as part of the HACCP plan, we have to include corrective actions. If you have an issue with a safe food handling or prerequisite program procedure not working properly or being followed, go to the corrective actions section of Part 1 to see how to address it and fix the issue. The end of Part 1 includes some additional resources as reference information. The TCS Foods information that used to be in Part 5, menus and recipes, was moved to Part 1 last school year, since it was really just reference material anyway. A large section on allergen awareness and management is towards the end of Part 1. The last section of Part 1 contains the position statements from the North Carolina Health and Human Services Environmental Health section. This is the state group that oversees local health inspectors. When we have a question or issue related to interpretation or implementation of food code regulations or other state regulations around food safety, we reach out to our contacts there for clarification, and often this results in the development of a position statement. We do not include all of their position statements in our HACCP plan template. We try to only include the relevant ones. Position statements include topics such as sharing tables and donated foods, packaged food and labeling, facilities-related guidance, and shared use kitchens. A full list of their position statements can be found at the link on the first page of the position statements section in Part 1 of our HACCP plan. For school year 24-25, we have added an older position statement related to food establishment permitting guidance, since we've seen some questions in this area recently. In this next section, I've included some topics that we commonly receive questions about and where you can find information in the commercial HACCP plan template. Sharing tables information is in several places in Part 1. Prerequisite programs, safe food handling procedures, as well as I mentioned the position statement on donated foods and sharing tables. There's also that donated food guidance, TPHC information and sample procedure, safe methods for cooling foods, bodily fluid cleanup procedures, which you may be asked for by a local health inspector, dish machine temperature requirements, food safety continuing education requirements, power outage resources, food safety recall, sample operating procedures, and allergen information. I do want to make a note about the food safety recall standard operating procedure. It's important to know how to react if food in your program is recalled or if there's a potential outbreak or an actual one of foodborne illness. It is also important for your school nutrition program to develop standard operating procedures for how to handle these situations from start to finish. The procedure must include identifying, isolating, and returning or destroying the food item in question, as well as record keeping and documentation in these areas. The sample food recall standard operating procedure is located in Part 1 and is a great resource for starting this process. That is Part 1. Do we have any questions so far? Feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat, and we'll do questions at the end too. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on to part 2, cooling procedures. Okay, we'll get to that when we talk about part 3 monitoring. So don't worry, we'll talk about cooling. Okay. All right, so part 2, a few years ago, we split part 2 to identify sections that had to be completed again each year versus those that only needed to be updated as information changes. So we divided them into part 2A and part 2B. Part 2A is the section that only needs to be revised each year if information in it changes. This is why we call it annual revision. Part 2A, the annual revision, contains the following information that may only need to be revised, as I said. It doesn't need to be completed from scratch each year, just updated for that information for that year as information changes. So that includes your food safety team, school kitchen description and facility information, personnel and food safety certifications, master cleaning schedule, equipment fixed assets and maintenance schedule, purchasing information such as your non-domestic lists and vendors, and hazard communications. If information changes during the year after you've already reviewed this section, you can update it again, but it's not required. However, updating it as it changes and as changes occur or periodically can help your consultant or reviewer to better understand your operation. The person you indicate as a team leader or PIC must have a current Certified Food Protection Manager certification. Make sure the food safety team and Certified Food Protection Manager sections are consistent. If you make an alternate, or if you indicate an alternate or innovative service location, such as a classroom, kiosk, hallway, etc., make sure that you have TPHC procedures to go along with food served at these locations if you are using TPHC and not tracking temperatures. In addition to listing any hazardous chemicals, it's important to conduct hazard communications training at least once each year with kitchen staff. This training should review the location of safety data or SDS sheets, information, and how to use it. Please do not overlook this section. It asks for the date of trainings if there's more than one. Substitute and temporary employees also need to be shown this information on their first day. It does take a team effort to complete Part 2A. Some of this information will most likely come from the central office. This includes information on equipment and fixed assets, equipment preventative maintenance, vacuum-packed TCS foods, the non-domestic products list, a vendor list, etc. Other information will come from the school site, which can be provided by the manager. You may have other questions about the facility itself that you cannot answer, so reach out to your facilities or maintenance team to assist you with those questions. Fortunately, you only have to revise this section as needed. And I saw a couple questions come in as I was reading. We are recording this webinar and we'll make it available when it is over. I'm not sure if we'll post it to the website or send it out, but we will make it available. And on slide 20, again, this is going to be recorded if you'd like to go back and review the slides, but I will go back to slide 20 real quick so you can take a picture. Is this the slide? I think slide 20. And this should be in the table of contents for Part 2A. All right, continue on. Just a couple things that we get questions a lot about in Part 2A. Things that are in there, what serving locations you're using, a list of TCS foods that will need TPHC procedures, and your non-domestic list should go in this section, a copy of it. All right, Part 2B. Unlike Part 2A, Part 2B will need to be completed from scratch each year. I like to think of 2B as scratch and 2A as speed scratch. This is why we call Part 2B the annual completion. So in this section, you will see a couple of subparts: the operation assessment, the food code labeling variants, and Hasset verification. To make sure all forms are completed and other necessary documents are included in the Hasset plan, you can use the HACCP checklist on our webpage as a tool for this commercial HACCP plan. Just a little pro tip there. So I mentioned the operation assessment and HACCP verification. Those are the two, I'll call them assessments, that you'll need to complete each year as part of your HACCP plan. The first is the annual operation assessment, which is a way to review your operation to make sure it's working well from a food safety standpoint. In other words, are food safety standards being met? An operation assessment must be performed every year before or at the beginning of the school year. This assessment will typically take between 1 and 2 hours to complete and can be done over multiple days. Some standards will need to be assessed in conjunction with maintenance staff. Other standards must be evaluated using the past 2 environmental health inspection reports. Responses can be handwritten or typed. We're flexible there. But please include only the current year's operation assessment form in this section. The second kind of assessment or evaluation is HACCP verification, also called verification of the HACCP plan. The other verification, I like to joke. This evaluates your HACCP plan to make sure it is helping control for potential food safety hazards effectively. Verification is defined as the process of evaluating the HACCP plan to determine whether the standards are being properly implemented, monitored, and observations recorded. Each school nutrition operation must identify one person who's responsible for verifying the HACCP plan annually at the beginning of the school year, if not done at the end of the previous year. Usually this is the person in charge or the team leader or supervisor. Complete the form and file it, as I said, the most recent verification in this section. So I'll give 2 examples because I think this sometimes causes a little bit of confusion. So if you complete these at the end of the previous school year, make sure to file it in the current year's HACCP book. In other words, if you complete HACCP verification for school year 23-24, at the end of that year, then file it with the 23-24 HACCP book. On the other hand, you could complete the operation assessment for school year 23-24 at the beginning of school year 24-25, but still put it with the 23-24 HACCP book since it's for that school year. Another suggestion is you might be able to provide both the current school year and the previous school year's HACCP book if requested on a TA or an AR, just so that the reviewers have all the information. Okay. I also want to talk about the HACCP labeling variants because I think this gets overlooked and people tend to have a lot of questions about it. But the food code variance is essentially an exemption, an approved exemption from the health department to allow school nutrition operations to package food in advance and not have to put any labeling information on it. So, per the food code, restaurants or other establishments that pre-package and put food out for sale have to label certain things about that food. The best example I can give is if you were to go to a convenience store and buy a, sandwich out of a, clamshell container that they have in like the to-go section, they have to put information on that, certain information that's labeling that product. We have applied for and received a variance for that requirement. So this section in your HACCP plan is indicating whether or not you would use that variance. So if you are that first option says that you're using the variance. So that means you are kind of pre-packaging food to go and not labeling. So that would be checking the first option. If you are not pre-packaging food ahead of time, then you wouldn't need it. So you would mark the second option there. Just make sure you choose one option that indicates what your plans are, whether or not you're going to use that variance. There's more information about the original packaging and labeling requirements with the position statements in part 1.